Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. And today I have another video for you guys from Swagkage. This one putting Pain against Sage Kabuto, which I do think is a very interesting fight because both of them are incredibly powerful. Both of them have a wide range of abilities, and I'm really curious to see who would win between the two. So let's go ahead and watch the video. And just a quick little note, if you can hear something in the background, it's because there's some people doing some construction, so just pay no attention to that.
How's it going, everyone? Swagkage here, and welcome to another Naruto video. Today we're going to be talking about something that somebody brought up to me on Twitter, and initially I wrote this off because I thought the answer to the question was pretty obvious, but the more I thought about it, the more I was like, actually, that'd make a pretty good video, so here we are. It goes without saying that we're talking about Kabuto versus Pain. And of course, I don't mean base Kabuto from the beginning of Shippuden or from part 1. I don't even think I need to get into that. And I guess as a bonus round, I'll also throw in a fight between Kabuto and Nagato. Not the Six Paths of Pain, but single body Nagato, the one that can use all of the powers of the Rinnegan at once. Now, even though I said the answer is obvious, this is a pretty tough fight to discuss because both fighters have such weird arsenals. Like, just as far as Naruto fighters go, Kabuto and Pain are both really unusual. And because of how situational many of their abilities are, this fight is going to be heavily affected by a lot of factors. The two most important ones are the location of the fight and the intel that both of them have going into the fight. Now, this could take place
And this is absolutely true because we've talked about this before, but when it comes to fights in Naruto, sometimes when you go into a fight having knowledge of your opponent's abilities, it can really help you. I mean, look at the fight between Naruto and Pain. Naruto went in having knowledge of Pain's abilities, and it really helped him out. And if you want an example of how it can really work against you when you don't have knowledge of your opponent's abilities, the fight between Jiraiya and Pain. Pain himself even said after he killed him that it's a good thing he didn't know our secret, otherwise we could have died. So that just goes to show you that sometimes your opponent not knowing your ability can be a real benefit to you and a big advantage in your favor. So let's go ahead and continue.
Anywhere, so I'll get into location in a little bit, but in character, I think Kabuto knows a lot more about Pain than Nagato knows about Kabuto. See, when Kabuto takes control of Nagato during the fight against Itachi, Naruto, and Bee, he actually does a pretty competent job. It's clear that he knows, at least to some extent, what the Rinnegan is capable of. Now, he doesn't know everything off the top of his head. He actually says, what else can these eyes do? What other tricks does Nagato have up his sleeve? So it's not like he'd know everything he has to deal with, but I think he'd definitely know enough to give himself an advantage. The knowledge that Naruto had going into his fight with Pain was super helpful, and I think that it's one of the only reasons he came out of that fight alive. Obito even says the only reason he doesn't have any of the Jinchuriki use the powers of the Six Paths of Pain is just because Naruto, Kakashi, and Guy would all know how to deal with them by this point. So this is all to say that while Kabuto certainly...
I mean, I do agree to an extent, but at the same time, I feel like someone who knows that your opponent knows how your ability works would be able to find a workaround. Do you see what I mean? It's like, okay, take this moment from the anime, for example, during the fight between, what was it, Naruto and Sasuke, where, and I do admit that this was the anime only, but that moment where Sasuke used Bansho Tenin on Naruto, Naruto knows how that ability works, but it didn't matter because Sasuke found a smart way to use it. And then he combined that with an ability of his own to try to deal with him. But unfortunately, well, maybe not unfortunately, it didn't work, for Sasuke, but good for Naruto because, he would have died. So I feel like Obito, who has proven himself to be very intelligent, I feel like he kind of would have found a way around that. You know what I mean? And also, I can't help but think that this was still like an excuse that was written by Kishimoto to stop Obito from using the Rinnegan abilities. Because, Rinnegan, Kamui, pretty dangerous combination. So, yeah, anyway, let's continue.
Certainly wouldn't know everything that the Six Paths of Pain can do. He'd know enough to put himself in a pretty decent position when starting the fight. Of course, Nagato doesn't really know anything about Kabuto aside from maybe the fact that he's a medical ninja or something because he used to work as a double agent for Orochimaru and the Akatsuki at the same time. But as far as his sage abilities are concerned and all of the body modifications he made, I don't think Nagato would have any clue what he's getting himself into with any of that. Kabuto, without a doubt, has a massive upper hand in terms of intel. Like I said earlier, another variable worth worth considering is where the fight takes place, and this is because of Kabuto's ability to use Muki Tensei, or inorganic reanimation. This is a really stupid power that allows him to take control of the environment, and when he
Hold on, let's read this. A ninjutsu wherein a user of sage mode, injects natural energy into an abiotic object or objects in order to manipulate the target. Kabuto, its only known user, has only been shown using it to control the rock formations present in Ryuchi Cave. Wait, were they fighting in Ryuchi Cave or were they fighting somewhere else? Because I don't think this was Ryuchi Cave. I think it was just another cave. But it is likely applicable to a variety of substances. Yeah, that's true. And it's why I think that, okay, let's say, for example, they were to fight in a forest. That ability wouldn't work because a forest is plant life and plant life is organic matter, so that ability wouldn't work.
he fought Sasuke and Itachi, he showed...
Also, seriously, look at this. Like, the entire cave, he's just manipulating it like it's nothing. I mean, this is insane.
Just how oppressive this ability can be when fighting in somewhere enclosed like a cave. If this fight takes place in a similar location, the Paths of Pain are going to have a really hard time because of how much flexibility this jutsu allows the environment to give to Kabuto. Somewhere flat and mostly free of scenery like where Naruto fought Pain would give the Six Paths the biggest edge here, even more than I think fighting in the Rain Village would, given how much inorganic material there is for Kabuto to animate there. Now, even if we do give the terrain advantage to the Paths of Pain, it's not like this is a huge handicap for Kabuto. There are still many ways for him to manipulate the environment, and even if there weren't, it's not like that's the only skill he has up his sleeve. Still, while we're on the subject of changing one's surroundings, Kabuto can also use Kimimara's Kekkei Genkai to fill the area with bones, and if the ability functions as it originally did when it was in Kimimara's possession, then Kabuto should be able to travel through the created bones at will. In all honesty, I don't think there are a lot of places that would put Kabuto at a serious disadvantage. The only person with a stake in the fight's location is Pain, and it's not because there's anywhere the two could fight that'd make it easier for him, but rather it's for the sake of keeping Kabuto from getting an easy victory. In summary, both of these factors cause the fight to lean in Kabuto's favor quite a bit. He has the edge in intel, and he doesn't really care where the fight takes place. At best, it gives him complete control of the battlefield, and at worst, it doesn't really negatively affect him. That isn't to say that these two things alone are enough to give Kabuto certain victory, but rather that they make it a lot harder for Pain to deal with him. Now, before I say any more, let's dive into the abilities of both fighters, because I haven't really done that yet, and it wouldn't be much of an analysis if I didn't talk about the bread and butter of, well, any fight, the fighters themselves. Now, normally in a video like this, I try to keep the analysis of both characters separate, but I don't think that's a very good idea here because of how heavily some of their skills interact with one another. So I'm going to be hopping back and forth between the two of them and more or less breaking them down at the same time. For starters, one thing they both have in common is they have very versatile skill sets. They each have a massive array of different powers and abilities, but where they differ is the Six Paths of Pain have their powers split among 6 different bodies, and this means that if just one of them is destroyed or injured, the versatility of the entire team is negatively affected. Now, the Six Paths technique does have inherent advantages that help offset this, with the two major ones being the massive field of vision shared by the Six Paths, and the increased mobility and strength intrinsically provided by simultaneously controlling the 6 bodies at once. Now, in a normal fight, both of these things would help Pain out quite a bit, but Kabuto has one jutsu capable of eliminating both of these advantages at the same time, even if it is only temporarily. The Sage Art White Rage technique is a ninjutsu where the user fires a projectile dragon that explodes in a violent burst of light and sound. It was intense enough to immobilize and blind Sasuke and Itachi at the same time, so I imagine that it would be pretty effective against the Paths of Pain. You could try to argue that maybe the Rinnegan could see through the burst of light or something, but neither Sasuke nor Itachi's Mangekyo Sharingan could, so I'm a bit hard-pressed to believe that Pain would be able to do it with no problem. Even if...
I mean, I think he might be able to, because the Rinnegan is a higher level of dojutsu than even the Mangekyo Sharingan, so I don't know. I mean, I think that he would be able to.
If he could, he'd still have to deal with the brief paralysis induced by the jutsu, which of course would eliminate the mobility advantage that we were just talking about. Another thing worth taking into consideration is most of the Paths of Pain aren't very durable. Konohamaru nearly destroyed one with a single Rasengan, and Naruto destroyed the Asura Path with one punch. The Asura Path also seemed to be one of the most durable Paths of Pain, like it survived getting hit by a Chidori and all of these other attacks in the fight against Kakashi, Choza, and Choji. So with the strength boost provided by Sage Mode and all of the body modifications he's made to himself, I imagine that Kabuto wouldn't have a very hard time destroying most of the Paths of Pain with a couple of attacks. On the other hand, I don't know if the Paths of Pain have any ways of dealing serious damage to Kabuto. He's shown to be insanely durable, and he can also regenerate. On top of that, he's very agile thanks to the speed and reflex boost provided by Sage Mode, and his sensory buff should allow him to avoid a lot of the attacks that Pain sends his way. In other words, he's going to be able to dodge a lot of the attacks that Pain tries to hit him with, and whenever he actually does take damage, it won't be anything that seriously affects him. It either shouldn't really affect him in the first place, or it should be something that he can regenerate from. The Osteropath and the Animal Path are both very heavy hitters, but I don't think either of them would be able to do enough serious damage to Kabuto to kill him before he destroys both of them. And the only other Paths of Pain that could realistically do anything to him are the Human Path through Soul Absorption and the Diva Path with Chaotic Shinra Tensei and Chibaku Tensei. Now these two might pose a bit of a problem for Kabuto, Chibaku Tensei more so than Shinra Tensei. The Human Path is kind of a non-issue because it's not built for combat, so we'll just focus on Chaotic Shinra Tensei.
It's mostly built for interrogation.
The problem with both of these is that Kabuto would be able to sense Nagato building up the chakra necessary to perform them. Before the Chaotic Shinra Tensei is launched, Kabuto could, after noticing a large amount of chakra being funneled into the Diva Path, set up a reverse summoning to take himself elsewhere temporarily, then come back and beat up the now powerless Diva Path, then he wins the fight. Chibaku Tensei is a little bit different. The thing about it is that the Diva Path has to get really close to Nagato's actual location, and as soon as Kabuto sees it leave the current location of the fight, I don't know if he'd choose to follow it. He also seemed familiar with Chibaku Tensei during Nagato's fight with Naruto and Itachi, so I think he might recognize what's going on and opt to temporarily
one of the advantages of having prior knowledge of your opponent's abilities.
Sucked into the gravity core. It's possible that he might be able to use inorganic reanimation to control the pieces of Earth clinging to the gravity core in order to free himself, or in order to send all of the pieces of the Earth after the Diva Path, or whatever. I mean, if he can't figure out a way to either avoid it or use inorganic reanimation to like reverse engineer it or something, then it'll definitely kill him. He'll be stuck in the center of this big old planetoid, and I mean, I can't imagine there's much he'd be able to do about it. And I also think if he takes a direct hit from Chaotic Shinra Tensei, I don't know if it'd kill him, but it'd do some pretty serious damage. I mean, I think that after getting hit by it, he'd easily be able to come back and wipe the Diva Path and any other remaining Paths of Pain out. I mean, if the Paths of Pain are anywhere nearby, they're probably going to get hit by it too, so they'll get wiped out, leaving the Diva Path as the only survivor, which again, it'll allow Kabuto to get an easy victory if he survives, which I think he will, even if it is just barely. Now, while Pain only really has 2 jutsu capable of dealing with Kabuto here, Kabuto has so many more tricks up his sleeve. He can immobilize the Pains with the White Rage jutsu and Kidomaru's webs. He can manipulate the terrain with Kimimaro's bones, inorganic reanimation, and even Jirobo's earth jutsu. He can catch all of the Paths of Pain in sound-based genjutsu with Taiyuya's powers, and it's been shown that the Paths of Pain are susceptible to this. Granted, the genjutsu performed by the Sage Toads might be on a much different level than Taiyuya's.
I think it was stated to be one of the strongest
genjutsus or
in the
Itachi
entire
were able to break it independently, and Itachi is like a genjutsu god, so I feel like the Paths of Pain wouldn't be able to break free of it either. Then there's the fact that he can liquefy his body to escape from any sticky situations, and the cherry on top is that with Sakon's Kekkei, he can even manifest an Orochimaru body, which supposedly allows him to steal the body of his opponent and add their abilities to his arsenal. I'm not sure how this would work with the Paths of Pain. I'm pretty sure all that would happen is he'd suck up the body and then he'd get the original powers of that body. So
he wouldn't get the actual Paths of Pain abilities because those belong to Nagato, not the
I mean, it
Paths of
doesn't
Pain.
really matter because regardless, the Paths of Pain lose one of their fighters. This is all without mentioning Kabuto's ability to use Edo Tensei, by the way. I think, just for the sake of fairness, I'll restrict that for like all of the rounds, because if he did bring Edo Tensei with him, Pain would obviously get annihilated, but even without it, I think 9 times out of 10, Kabuto would take the win, just because he has so many ways of dealing with all of the Paths of Pain, and the Paths of Pain only really have a couple ways of dealing with him. Now for that bonus round I mentioned. Nagato is a completely different story. Like, at full power, given his performance against B,
he
Naruto,
took on
and
2
Itachi,
Jinchurikis
Kabuto might have his hands
and
full.
won,
It's a bit
basically.
hard to say, because I don't know if he'd be able to absorb.
Because remember, B is considered a perfect Jinchuriki, and both of these were the Jinchuriki of the 2 strongest tailed beasts. So the fact that Nagato took on both of them and basically won, like if it wasn't for Itachi, then yeah, they'd both be dead. And I mean, that just tells you just how insane Nagato is, and I feel like a lot of people heavily underestimate this version of Nagato.
absorb Sage Chakra any more effectively than the Pratapath initially could. But, like, if he can absorb Sage Chakra without getting turned into a frog statue,
I
then
think he'd be able
Kabuto's
to.
probably fucked. Like, Nagato will just absorb all of his projectile attacks, he'll figure out a way to immobilize him, and then he'll rip out his soul. He'd be able to do that much more effectively than I think the Six Paths of Pain could. Just take a look at Nagato's fight against Biju, Naruto, B, and Itachi at the same time. But if he's not able to absorb nature energy, then maybe Kabuto will take it. I'm not too sure. The thing about single body Nagato is he doesn't have many of the weaknesses that the Six Paths of Pain do, at least not the weaknesses that Kabuto would be able to exploit pretty easily. So I'm certain that he has a much better chance in this fight than the Six Paths do. Anyway, that's gonna wrap up the video from me. Let me know what you thought about the battle in the comments as always. Make sure you have a great rest of the day. Thanks for watching the video all the way to the end. And until next time, talk to you later. Swagkage out. Bye.
Okay, so that is the video, and look, this is one of the reasons why I absolutely love these debates, because you get to look at both of these characters, what they can do, and how exactly would a fight between them go. And while I do agree that if they were fighting the Paths of Pain, Kabuto might have a better chance because, as he said, the Paths of Pain aren't very durable, especially if they're fighting a Sage Jutsu enhanced individual. They would have a very, very difficult time. Even though he fought Sage Naruto, and technically Pain did win if it wasn't for the whole Minato mental thing BS. And Kabuto, of course, having prior knowledge of all of Pain's abilities, and in my opinion, having a much better understanding of Sage Mode than even Naruto did, because I think he spent longer studying Sage Mode than Naruto did. Because remember, Naruto had to have his training cut short because Pain invaded the village, and he had to leave and, of course, fight. And Kabuto, I think, actually was able to finish his training, which is why you saw him be so versatile with Sage Mode, and then not to mention all of the body enhancements that he did to himself, where he is now capable of using abilities from Orochimaru, Kidomaru, Kimimaru, Tayuya, and what was he able to use? Yeah, I think Sakon was one of them. Yeah. Anyway, I don't think he was able to use Jirobo's ability. No, I don't remember Jirobo showing up. Although it's been a while. Maybe he did, and I just I'm not remembering it at the moment. But Nagato, dude. Again, like I said, Nagato on his own took on two Jinchurikis, one of them being a perfect Jinchuriki, and one of them is the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, and he still won. I mean, that is insane. Which does kind of make you wonder, like, why would Nagato even bother with the Six Paths of Pain if he was that strong on his own? And again, it does always kind of bother me whenever I see that fight, because he was able to go back to being basically healthy, before he became that skeleton. And it's like, why didn't you do this before? Like, I mean, if you could do this the entire time. And someone could say, well, maybe he didn't know. But to me, like, why? How would he not know? Because he had all this time with the Renegon. You think he would have figured it out by now. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. You know what? I want to throw the question to you guys. Who do you think would win? Based on what Swagkage went over in this video, who do you think would win? Let me know in the comment section down below. Remember to do all the YouTube things. And of course, I hope I see you guys for the next video. Bye for now.